Hello viewers and welcome back to Sahara TV. On this segment we're going to be discussing the ongoing crisis in Syria, specifically looking at the deal that apparently is either in the midst of being reached or has been reached according to some reports in the international communities between US and Russia and other countries on removing the chemical weapons stockpile from Syria and the Assad government. With me today to shed some light on this issue and on the crisis in general is Mr. Ogbunwezeh, Franklin Ogbunwezeh. He is the head of the Africa Department at the International Society for Human Rights based in Germany. Thank you, Mr. Ogbunwezeh, for being with us here today on Sahara TV.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, viewer.
So to start off, sir, I'd just like to talk about this deal that apparently was reached today and is in the works of being finalized between US and Russia over the removal of Syria's chemical weapons. The particulars, at least as far as we have heard so far, is that Damascus is going to be given 1 week to declare its stock of chemical weapons. And then they're going to move from there, I think, in a couple of steps on securing the stockpiles and then go toward removal. Now, in your eyes, sir, is this a win for diplomacy? And I'd like to tag on the question, do you believe that President Obama made the right move when he decided to give diplomacy a chance and take a step back from the military strikes that the U.S. was talking about and give a chance for dialogue to occur in the international community?
Well, thank you for the question. I really think that in this era, of this time, what we actually need today are statesmen. And President Barack Obama has shown himself a statesman. According to Winston Churchill, statesmen think about the next generation, and politicians think about the next election. And Obama has proven himself today a statesman. We welcome that in the whole international community and the international human rights community as a win-win for everybody, for diplomacy, for the American people, the majority of who don't want to fight the war, and for our world. We are war-weary. Iraq is still bleeding. Afghanistan is an unfinished business. American mothers were being called upon again to yield their sons to go fight the war that we don't know what the outcome will look like. So, and what about the Syrian people who are bleeding every day? Over 100,000 Syrians are dead already. So the solution to the Syrian crisis lies in dialogue. And for the major powers supporting the various factions of this conflict to reach out hands to each other to say, hey, we can do it another way. We must not fight the war. We can talk. Talking is better than shooting. In any case, I think Obama has shown himself a great and intelligent leader in this case.
Yeah, so you mentioned the fact that there were over 100,000 Syrian people that have been killed in the country, and the fact that this conflict has been going on for over 2 years. Based on the fact that this is only covering this current resolution would only cover the removal of the chemical weapons, what's to say, like, how do we go forward from here on actually establishing a peace conference or some type of deal that would lead to the actual end of hostilities? Given that most of the actual casualties have come from the use of conventional weapons, which is not being discussed at this point. And like you mentioned, given the time frame that has occurred over the 2 years, how much longer do the Syrian people need to wait, given the dialogue could take some time and we have ongoing fighting on the ground right now?
Well, thank you. I think the war is still going on because the major powers are supplying the arms and ammunition. If the United States and Russia would desist from supplying weapons to the opposition and to the Assad government, respectively, and call for a ceasefire. This is what the ordinary Syrian man and woman and child on the street needs at this time. So if these major powers with their all the mandarins like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the rest of them, and Iran on the other hand, and Hezbollah, if these guys could be called to the discussion table, I think that would be the most interesting thing, and that would be the only way to go about this. Mind you, Syria is a sore on the conscience of the world at this time. Because trying to attack Assad because of chemical weapons alone is just a conceptual support for killing people with conventional weapons, as if to say murdering people is allowed under international law. So I should think that the only way to get about this is for the United States and Russia to move a step further in calling for a ceasefire and inviting the major factions to this conflict back to the negotiating table without conditions. Certain conditions will lead to serious problems that none of us can foresee what its outcome is going to be. So I should think that we need a ceasefire equally to send aid and humanitarian aid to the people who are caught across in the crossfire of this conflict. So I think a ceasefire is necessary, and inviting these people back to the Geneva II talks that has been always at the table throughout this conflict. Once these two parties, United States could tell the opposition, we need you back at the table. Russia could tell Assad, hey, dialogue is the only way to go about this. And I think that's the only solution to this problem. Shooting, wars, bombs, and planes cannot solve this problem at this time.
On the current deal, and you know, that's been going forward, the fact that it was put forth by Russia and that Putin has been largely responsible for engineering, you know, these talks, are that, as the reports say. What do you think of the move by Putin, and going forward, as you talk about the need for dialogue and to bring both parties back to the negotiating table? Does this diminish the America's presidency in this capacity?
Not at all. I wouldn't think so. I would think that the opening came from the American side without what we call the slip of tongue from John Kerry, which was supported by his president. Russia wouldn't have taken the initiative. And I think this is a win-win situation that doesn't make anybody lose face. The Russians took an opening that they saw from the American side and proposed what would be a workable solution. And I salute President Obama for accepting that. You know, if you refer back to another time, a few years, in 2003, George Bush was won by Hans Blisk and David Kelly. We have not found anything in Iraq. But instead of waiting and listening to the voice of reason, Bush decided to march into Iraq. And we all are living with the consequences today. That Obama chose the way of dialogue, shows that he's a wise and intelligent leader. And I salute him for that. I salute the efforts of the Russian people, especially President Putin, giving peace a chance. Anybody that it came from, anybody that accepted it, peace never diminishes anybody. It enriches all of us.
I have a question concerning the push for peace, though, and your part, and what you think of this. Given the fact that Russia is, you know, an ally of Assad, and the fact that, in a way, you know, bringing to peace and not allowing, because Western powers have been supportive of the opposition to bring down the Assad regime, you know, isn't there a lot of political interest and political capital that can be gained, and even international political capital that can be gained by bringing a peace to agreement and allowing Assad to stay? I mean, Russia's really, you know, it could kind of just push against the Western powers as they've done in the past. I mean, isn't there a little selfish interest there as well?
Well, no doubt. There are selfish interests across board. And if you remember history, since the Treaty of Versailles, okay, the interests of the poor people, ordinary people, have been sacrificed at the chessboard of, you know, global power play. Russia was sacrificed to appease the winning powers of the First World War, and that led us to a Second World War. Have we ever asked the question, what does the ordinary Syrian man, woman, and child want? Right. This is the question we're asking, and not asking about the interests of the superpowers. They are not the victims of this conflict. And we have to remember, victims of history never forget it. The Americans will go home someday if they succeeded in invading Syria. They will go home someday. But the people that are going to be living with the after effects of this are the Syrian people. This is the people we should be asking, what do they want? We should put their interest at the forefront, not the interest of these major powers. There is a proverb from my native tongue that says, where two elephants fight, it's the grasses that suffer. The Syrian people have suffered enough. So these superpowers should put their selfish and geostrategic interests at bay and then think about what our world needs today. And that is peace. We are war weary. And we want a situation where people could live in peace to fend for their families. That's what every other person wants everywhere. And the Syrian people are no different from all of us. So I think they need peace at this time. And dialogue is the essential arena where peace could be ironed out. And Russia and the United States need to be major collaborators in this regard, not enemies anymore. So we have passed the Cold War stage. We are in a new era today. And I wish to see more of this collaborative work between Putin and Obama. solving all the problems that confront our world today. So selfish interests should be kept at bay. And let us talk about the Syrian people. They are the people that need our help and our compassion at this stage.
Yes, to that note, and thank you for that. To that note, I would like to just read a quick statement that was released by the Free Syrian Army following this agreement between U.S. and Russia for the removal of the stockpiled chemical weapons. They said that the FSA will work toward toppling Assad and does not care about U.S.-Russia deals, and that they were upset that the international community has not given them more overt support in their fight against the Assad regime. Now, they seem to have no interest in, and as they've stated, will work toward toppling the Assad regime. Now, obviously, it's hard to tell whether that is, a red line that they will not be willing to cross given certain, they could be brought to the negotiating table given certain conditions, or if both sides agree to, certain conditions that would appease both sides. But if it is true that the Free Syrian Army and other opposition groups that exist now in the country do not wish to come to the negotiating table, how will that be? I mean, those are some of the ordinary Syrian people that you're talking about that are on the ground fighting, that are on the ground losing their lives, and the civilians that are in the surrounding areas on both sides. How, is that overcome? And in which case the superpowers would still, as you say, would still have to be involved in bringing those groups to the negotiating table. Now, one side has said they don't wish to negotiate.
Well, I believe this is possible. There is what we call war. There's propaganda in every war. And the very first victim of every war is the truth. Truth goes. What they are saying in public is what they should say. But if America withdraws support from them, I don't think they will last 3 months. Before the whole chemical weapon issue came up, Assad was beating them on all fronts of the war. So, if America is able to lean on the opposition, I think they will come to the negotiating table. We all know that. So that they could make public statements. But we know that there are openings towards talking, and we should utilize that. America has a great leverage here, and America has the moral responsibility to get these people back to the table, to start talking. Another issue is whether Assad will be willing to talk to them. Scott Bennett has worked on this, Lagda Brahimi has worked on this, and they all seem to have failed. But at this stage, there is a movement. The Russians have initiated the move, and Obama has accepted it. Let us, seize this momentum and see what we can do for the ordinary Syrian people.
Yeah, just one final question on the issue of accountability regarding human rights. Now, Ban Ki-moon came out today and he was calling for accountability concerning crimes against humanity. Now, there have been reports that state that both sides have committed certain crimes against humanity. However, most reports show that the Assad regime has been on the heavy side of committing versus what the opposition has been able to do, I suppose. Then the question is, how will accountability work if, a couple of things. One, if the opposition, like you say, if they lean on the opposition and they can't last if support is withdrawn, what's to stop Assad from carrying out further atrocities against the people that he now considers responsible for this opposition, some of which we have seen have been just Syrian civilians, caught up in the midst of these towns and cities where the fighting has been taking place. And then even if we do come to a, peace negotiated, there still has to be a way. Do you think it's fair if there's no accountability held on either side?
Well, no. Justice demands accountability for anybody who violates human rights or commits crimes against humanity, and I am all for it. But the point lies in the fact that I think it depends on this from the perspective you're looking at it. Okay. Both sides have committed and are still committing heavy human rights violations across board. The opposition was filmed, documented, butchering people, slaughtering people like cattle. They were filmed shooting people, unarmed, captured prisoners of war. Assad is not a saint in this regard. He is a war criminal as well. But you have to look at this from both sides, both the opposition and the government, in what atrocities happen. And people who are identified as perpetrators should be brought to book when all is done. But first thing we need to fight for, let us get peace first and then negotiate a political solution to this problem. Once that is done, then the criminals will not be allowed to get away scot-free. We have the International Criminal Court at The Hague. He tried Charles Taylor after or in Liberia. So we have legal precedents to that effect, and that could come into effect in the case of Syria, I think.
So I guess, sorry, just one quick follow-up. Do you see, should a peace negotiation come to pass, do you see Assad being left in power? Would that work at all?
Well, I can't see tomorrow, to be honest with you. But if you ask me for my private personal opinion, I will give it. Assad should step aside, and then an interim government should be put in place to oversee transition to a democratic government in Syria. That's what the Syrian people want, and that's what they need, and that's what it is after these long years of desolation.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And thank you again for being with us here on SaharaTV.
It's my pleasure.
Viewers, that was Mr. Franklin Ogbunwezeh, head of the Africa Department at the International Society for Human Rights based in Germany. He was with us to shed some light on the recent deal that has been put together to remove the chemical weapon stockpiles from Syria, and also to shed some light on the crisis in total and what he hopes will be a peaceful negotiation to put an end to the conflict. Thank you and stay tuned. Next up, we have the organizer of the Africa Day Parade that goes on every year here in New York City and brings together cultures and communities of the African diaspora here in New York. So do stay tuned. It'll be very interesting. And if you are in New York or are going to be in New York on September 22nd, you should definitely come out and join the parade and support the parade. Later today, we will be speaking with one of the candidates in the Anambra gubernatorial elections, and we'll be having our Skype segment. So do join us and stay tuned for more to come. Thank you.